I didn't go looking for proof. That's the part that still matters to me. I wasn't digging through her phone. I wasn't tracking her location. I wasn't trying to catch her in anything. The charge just happened to be there, sitting quietly in our joint account like it had every right to exist. It was a Tuesday night. Ordinary. Megan was upstairs finishing what she called a late client sync. I was at the kitchen island, scrolling through our banking app while waiting for the pasta water to boil. We've always shared finances. Same card. Same checking account. Transparency was something we used to pride ourselves on. That's why the Cleveland charge felt so loud. $482. Boutique hotel. Downtown Cleveland. I stared at it longer than I should have. The number wasn't outrageous. We've spent more on anniversaries. What bothered me wasn't the amount. It was the city. We don't live in Cleveland. We don't vacation there. And Megan had said, more than once, that she never travels to Cleveland anymore because her company shut down the regional office. I checked the date. 3 weeks ago. One of her quick one-day strategy trips. The ones where she left before sunrise and came back after midnight. The ones I stopped questioning because I didn't want to be the husband who resents ambition. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Corporate billing mistake. Fraud. Some weird processing error. Something simple. I waited until she came downstairs. She looked relaxed. Barefoot. Hair down. That oversized gray sweater she wears when she wants to look soft and approachable. She grabbed a glass from the cabinet like nothing in the world was wrong. "Hey," I said, keeping my tone casual. "Quick question." She didn't look at me yet. "Yeah. Did you have a meeting in Cleveland recently?" That made her glance up. "Why?" "There's a hotel charge there. From a few weeks ago." She paused. Just half a second. Most people wouldn't notice it. But I did. I've been married to her for 8 years. I know her rhythms. That pause wasn't confusion. It was calculation. "Oh," she said lightly, turning back to the fridge. "Yeah, that must have been when I met with the Madsen group. They moved the meeting last minute." I nodded slowly. "I thought you said you don't go to Cleveland anymore." Her head turned sharply this time. "I said I rarely go. Not never." Her voice wasn't loud. It was precise. "I just don't remember you mentioning it," I said. She set the sparkling water on the counter a little harder than necessary. "Do I need to run every trip by you now?" "That's not what I'm saying." "It kind of is." There it was. The shift. I felt my chest tighten. "I'm not accusing you of anything. I just saw the charge and didn't recognize the city." She let out a short laugh. "Wow. Okay. So now we're auditing travel expenses." "I'm not auditing anything." "You've been weird lately, Alex." Her eyes locked onto mine. "You question everything. It's exhausting." The word hit harder than I expected. Exhausting. I asked one question, and I answered it. Her tone got colder, measured, controlled. "Why are you looking for problems where none exist?" That line landed somewhere deep. Why are you looking for problems where none exist? Suddenly I wasn't asking about Cleveland. I was defending my sanity. "I'm not looking for problems," I said quietly. She crossed her arms. "It feels like you are. And honestly, feels controlling." Controlling. That word rearranged the entire conversation. I felt myself step backward emotionally. Not physically, but inside. I hate that word. I've spent my whole life trying not to be that guy. I don't check her messages. I don't question her friends. I don't limit her career. "I'm not trying to control anything," I said. "I just wanted clarity." "You have clarity." Her face softened slightly, but not in a loving way. In a dismissive way. It was work. End of story. And just like that, the discussion was over. On the surface, everything she said made sense. Meetings move. Corporate life is chaotic. Travel pops up unexpectedly. I know that. I live in that world too. But something about the way she redirected it, the way she turned my curiosity into suspicion, and suspicion into flaw, unsettled me. She didn't over-explain. She didn't stumble. She didn't panic. She calmly shifted the spotlight onto me. and somehow I walked away feeling guilty. That night in bed, she scrolled on her phone longer than usual. The screen glow lit her face in soft blue. I watched her reflection in the window without meaning to. At one point, she tilted the phone slightly away from me. Small movement, tiny, but deliberate. "You coming to sleep?" she asked without looking up. "Yeah." I turned off my lamp and lay there in the dark. She eventually set the phone down, rolled to her side, her back facing me. We used to fall asleep tangled together. Now there was a neutral strip of mattress between us. Like an invisible border neither of us crossed anymore. I stared at the ceiling and replayed the conversation. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe I was insecure. Maybe stress was making me hypersensitive. But then my brain started connecting dots I had carefully ignored for months. The late-night Zoom calls where I never heard another voice. The one-day trips that required overnight bags. The new habit of taking calls in the bathroom with the shower running. The way she started locking her laptop automatically. The weekends that stopped belonging to us. She used to tell me stories about her coworkers, office politics, funny mistakes, names, faces. Now her work life existed in vague summaries. It was fine. Long day. Nothing interesting. And the bedroom, that part hurt the most. It didn't explode into fights. It just faded. Slowly. Gradually. Like someone dimming the lights one notch at a time until you don't notice you're sitting in darkness. She said she was tired, stressed, preoccupied, and I believed her, because believing her was easier than confronting what the alternative meant. But lying there that night, I realized something uncomfortable. The Cleveland charge wasn't the first thing that didn't add up. It was just the first thing I couldn't unsee. And what bothered me more than the hotel was how easily she made me feel wrong for noticing it. I didn't feel reassured. I felt corrected. And that's when a quiet thought entered my mind. One I didn't want there. If nothing is wrong, why did she need to make me the problem? After Cleveland, I stopped sleeping properly. Not because we fought. We didn't. That was the problem. Everything on the surface remained calm, functional, polite. But my mind wouldn't stop replaying details I had dismissed for months. Once you notice one crack, the rest of the wall starts to look unstable. I began mentally retracing the last 6 months like I was reviewing security footage in my own life. The late-night Zoom calls were the first thing that came back to me. She used to take work calls in the office downstairs. Door open. Normal tone. I'd hear the rhythm of actual meetings. Pauses, other voices chiming in. The awkward corporate laughter. But around late spring, that changed. Now the calls happened upstairs. Bedroom door closed. Voice lowered. Sometimes almost whispering. Once, I walked down the hallway and paused outside the door. Silence. Then a soft laugh. Not her professional laugh. Her real one. When I opened the door slightly, she jumped. "I thought you were in the kitchen," she said quickly. "I was," I answered. She muted the call immediately. Too quickly. After that, the pattern continued. Late calls. Closed doors. Lowered voice. If I asked who it was, the answer was always vague. Just team stuff. Client escalation. Strategy alignment. Corporate words. No names. Then there were the one-day trips. She'd say, "I'll be back tonight." But she always packed an overnight bag. I asked once, casually, "Why the full bag if it's just a day trip?" "In case flights get delayed," she replied without hesitation. Logical. Reasonable. Except flights rarely got delayed. And even when they didn't, she'd still come home exhausted, shower immediately, and fall asleep without much conversation. She used to text me from airports, send pictures of bad coffee, complain about TSA lines. That stopped too. Now her trips were quiet. Minimal updates. Sometimes none at all unless I initiated. I told myself she was busy, important, under pressure. But there was another shift that bothered me more than the travel. The bathroom calls. That one felt subtle at first. She'd take her phone with her more often. Then she started running the shower before answering certain calls. I remember one specific Saturday morning. We had no plans. Coffee was brewing. It was calm. Her phone lit up on the counter. She glanced at it, and her entire posture changed. She picked it up immediately and said, "I need to grab this," before walking to the bathroom. Shower turned on. Door locked. The call lasted 11 minutes. I counted. When she came out, her hair was dry. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just work." Saturday morning. Work. I didn't argue. I didn't push. But something in my chest tightened. Then there were the weekends. We used to have routines. Farmer's market. Late brunch. Movie nights on the couch. Even mundane grocery runs felt shared. Now weekends felt like scheduling negotiations. "I've got a thing Saturday. Sunday might be busy." Rain check. She stopped asking what I wanted to do. Stopped suggesting anything at all. The house felt like a hotel. We passed each other politely. The distance in the bedroom was the final piece I kept refusing to examine. It didn't collapse overnight. It eroded. Gradually. Excuses became patterns. "I'm tired. Long week. Headache." I told myself int asterisk Macy ebbs and flows. That marriage isn't constant fire. That mature relationships aren't about frequency. But what unsettled me wasn't just the lack of closeness. It was the absence of effort. She stopped initiating anything. Stopped touching my arm casually. Stopped lingering in hugs. At night, she rolled away faster. And if I moved closer, she'd subtly shift. Not rejecting me outright, just creating space. The kind of space that looks accidental, but isn't. I also noticed she stopped sharing details about her life. When we first got married, she told me everything. Office gossip, tiny frustrations, new ideas she was excited about. Now conversations felt like executive summaries. "How was your day?" "Fine." "What did you work on?" "Just stuff." I tried to push gently once. "Are we okay?" I asked one evening. She looked genuinely surprised. "Of course we are. Why wouldn't we be?" "I don't know. It just feels distant lately." She exhaled like I'd inconvenienced her. "Alex, not everything is a crisis." That word again. Crisis. As if I was manufacturing instability. The more I reflect on it now, the more I realize how gradually she trained me to doubt my own perception. If I noticed something, I was overthinking. If I asked something, I was suspicious. If I felt something was off, I was insecure. And because I didn't want to be any of those things, I stopped asking. Until Cleveland. Cleveland forced me to reopen the file. One night, about a week after that conversation, I stood in our living room at 3:07 a.m. Couldn't sleep. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. She was upstairs. I don't know what pulled me out of bed. Anxiety, instinct, something unnamed. I just stood there in the dark, looking at the staircase, realizing something I hadn't allowed myself to admit. This wasn't just stress. It wasn't just career pressure. It wasn't just a phase. It was distance by design. And the scariest part? She wasn't confused. She was deliberate. When I finally went back upstairs, she was awake, sitting upright in bed, phone in hand. The screen went dark the moment I entered. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah." I lied. We stared at each other for a second too long. And in that moment, I understood something that made my stomach drop. We were no longer living the same marriage. I was trying to preserve it. She was already somewhere else. I didn't have proof yet, but I had pattern. And pattern is louder than any single charge on a credit card. 3 nights later, everything shifted. It was 3:12 a.m. I remember the exact time because I checked the microwave clock when I walked downstairs. I hadn't planned to confront her. I hadn't planned anything at all. I just couldn't breathe in that bedroom anymore. The air felt staged. She followed me down a few minutes later. Not confused. Not half asleep. Fully awake. That alone told me something. "What are you doing?" she asked, standing at the edge of the living room. Couldn't sleep. She didn't sit next to me. She stayed standing. There was no softness in her posture. No concern. Just distance. "We need to talk," she said. My chest tightened. "About Cleveland? About us?" About something else? She crossed her arms lightly, not defensive, just resolved. I think it's better if we're honest. Honest. The word almost made me laugh. I agree, I said quietly. She took a breath. There's not going to be any more int asterisk Macy between us. I stared at her. I expected explanation, hesitation, emotion. There was none. It's not working for me anymore, she continued, voice flat. And I don't want to keep pretending. Pretending. The word echoed. So what does that mean? I asked. It means I'm done trying to force something that isn't there. Something inside me went cold. This wasn't confusion. It wasn't counseling language. It wasn't a temporary separation discussion. It was a decision already made. Is this about someone else? I asked carefully. She didn't flinch. She didn't deny it. She didn't confirm it either. She just said, "This isn't up for debate, Alex. Up for debate. Like we were discussing paint colors. You don't get to unilaterally end a marriage at 3 a.m. I said. I'm not ending the marriage, she replied calmly. I'm ending the physical part of it. We can coexist. We can be mature. Coexist. Mature. Corporate phrasing again. My heart was pounding, but my face felt strangely still. How long have you felt this way? A while. How long is a while? She exhaled slowly, clearly irritated. Why does it matter? Because it matters if you checked out 6 months ago or yesterday. Because it matters if Cleveland was before or after you decided this. Because it matters if I've been the only one trying. But I didn't say any of that. Instead I said, "Is there someone else?" Her jaw tightened. I'm not doing this interrogation. That was the closest thing to an answer I was going to get. And in that moment, I understood something with painful clarity. This wasn't a phase. It wasn't distance. It wasn't stress. It was replacement. The realization didn't explode inside me. It settled. Heavy. Quiet. Permanent. She walked back upstairs without another word. And I stayed there, staring at the dark TV screen reflecting a version of me I didn't recognize. That night wasn't about heartbreak. It was about finality. The next morning, she acted normal. Coffee, emails, calendar planning. Like she hadn't just amputated the most int asterisk mate part of our marriage. I went to work and couldn't focus. Not because I was emotional, but because something inside me had shifted from confusion to calculation. I needed confirmation, not confrontation. Confirmation. That evening, while she was at the gym, another new habit, I opened the shared cloud folder we used for taxes and documents. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. Then I saw it. A subfolder labeled Travel 2025. She had never organized travel that neatly before. Inside were PDF tickets. Cleveland. 3 separate trips. Each labeled as client meetings. Each booked round trip, but with overnight hotel confirmations attached. Not one-day trips. 2 nights. 3 nights. The dates matched the distance I'd felt. The night she came home exhausted and showered immediately. The weekend she said flights were delayed. The Tuesday I ate dinner alone. I clicked into one of the confirmation emails. The booking name wasn't just hers. It included a second traveler. Same last name as a colleague she'd mentioned once months ago. Daniel Mercer. My stomach dropped. I searched the internal company directory. Daniel Mercer, Regional Operations Lead. Based in Cleveland. The pattern was no longer theoretical. It was documented. Flight numbers, hotel confirmations, matching itineraries. And then I found something else. Expense reports, shared dining receipts, room service charges for 2. I sat back in the chair and stared at the screen. No dramatic music, no shouting, just clarity. The Cleveland charge hadn't been a billing error. It was part of a routine I wasn't supposed to notice. I didn't feel rage. I felt embarrassed, because she hadn't been sloppy. She'd been confident. Confident I wouldn't look. Confident I'd accept her explanations. Confident I'd tolerate the ultimatum. That hurt more than the affair itself. When she came home that night, I didn't confront her. I watched her move around the kitchen, scrolling on her phone, smiling faintly at something. Probably him. The 3 a.m. declaration suddenly made perfect sense. She wasn't ending int asterisk Macy out of confusion. She was reallocating it. And the coldest part? She expected me to stay, to coexist, to accept the downgraded version of my own marriage. That was the moment something hardened inside me. Not anger, resolve. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to stage a dramatic scene. She had made her choice quietly. I would respond the same way. And for the first time in months, my thoughts felt steady, clear, strategic. She believed I would tolerate everything. That was her first mistake. I didn't confront her. That's the part that surprised me the most. A year ago, even 6 months ago, I would have exploded. I would have demanded answers, thrown evidence on the table, forced her to say it out loud. But when you see everything laid out in clean PDF confirmations and shared expense reports, there's no need for theatrics. Facts don't argue. Facts don't cry. Facts don't gaslight you. They just sit there. I closed the laptop and sat in silence for a long time. Not processing heartbreak, processing leverage. Because something had shifted inside me that night in the living room when she declared the marriage physically over. That wasn't grief talking. That was certainty. She thought she'd already transitioned out of this marriage. She just hadn't told me the paperwork part. I slept in the guest room that night. Not dramatically, just quietly. She didn't comment on it in the morning. Didn't ask why. Which told me everything. The next day at work, I requested 2 personal days off. Calmly. No explanation. Just logistics. Then I called an old acquaintance in Cincinnati, Marcus. We'd stayed loosely in touch over the years. He worked in corporate compliance and had once joked that divorce was just risk management with paperwork. Random question, I said when he picked up. You ever dealt with prenups in messy situations? He paused. Define messy. Infidelity with documentation. Another pause. Longer this time. You have proof. Yes. Then you don't need emotion. You need a lawyer. That word hit differently than it would have a month ago. Lawyer. Not counselor. Not mediator. Lawyer. I didn't tell Marcus details. I didn't vent. I just asked for a recommendation in Ohio who specialized in high-asset marital agreements. By noon, I had a name. By 2, I had a consultation scheduled for the next morning. I left work early and drove around aimlessly before going home. I needed the physical space to think clearly. When I walked into the house, she was on the couch, legs tucked under her, typing something on her phone. She looked up briefly. You're home early. Yeah. No follow-up question. No curiosity. We existed in parallel now. 2 professionals sharing a lease. That night, she went upstairs around 10. I stayed downstairs and began organizing everything I had downloaded from the cloud. Flight confirmations, hotel receipts, expense reimbursements, calendar overlaps. I created a folder on a flash drive labeled Archive. No dramatic titles. No emotional naming. Just evidence. Then I remembered something. The prenuptial agreement. It had been her family's idea. Her father insisted on it before the wedding. Standard procedure when assets are involved, he'd said. At the time, I didn't fight it. I wasn't marrying her for money. And honestly, it felt like a formality. We signed it in a quiet law office 6 months before the wedding. I hadn't thought about it in years. Until now. I searched through our shared digital archive. And there it was. Prenuptial agreement. Final executed copy. I opened the PDF. Page after page of legal language. Asset separation. Business interests. Investment accounts. Then I found the clause. Buried in Section 9, subsection C. In the event of proven marital infidelity by either party, the offending party forfeits claim to the majority of jointly acquired assets during the marriage, excluding individually titled retirement accounts. I read it 3 times. Proven marital infidelity. Forfeits claim. Majority of jointly acquired assets. The house. The investment portfolio. The equity growth over 8 years. All of it suddenly recalculated. My hands didn't shake. My pulse didn't race. I just felt awake. She had been confident. Confident enough to mock me in emails. Confident enough to phase me out slowly. Confident enough to declare int asterisk Macy finished. But she had forgotten the clause her own family insisted on. Or she assumed I'd never use it. I slept better that night than I had in weeks. The next morning, I drove to Cincinnati. I told her I had meetings out of town. She barely looked up. The attorney's office was quiet and modern. Minimal decor. Efficient. Her name was Rebecca Langford. She didn't waste time. Show me what you have. I handed her the flash drive. She reviewed in silence for almost 30 minutes. Then she looked up. This is comprehensive. I didn't want speculation, I said. She nodded. The prenup clause is enforceable, especially with documented travel and expense records. What does that mean for asset division? It means leverage. Significant leverage. The word again. Leverage. Not revenge. Not punishment. Leverage. She outlined the process. File quietly. Serve formally. Let documentation speak. If Megan contested, discovery would expand, which would expose even more. It would not be emotional. It would be procedural. I liked that. When I left the office, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt aligned. For the first time in months, I wasn't reacting. I was acting. That evening, I stayed at Marcus's spare room in Cincinnati. Not because I needed to, but because distance helps clarity. I sat on the edge of the guest bed and realized something unexpected. I wasn't devastated. I wasn't spiraling. I wasn't plotting dramatic revenge. I was calm, because the worst part wasn't the affair. It was the ultimatum. She believed I would accept coexistence, that I would shrink quietly, that I would adapt to a loveless arrangement because it was comfortable. That belief was her second mistake. The first had been Cleveland. The second was underestimating me. By the time I drove back home 2 days later, the paperwork was already drafted. All that remained was timing and execution. I didn't serve her immediately. Timing matters. Emotion makes noise. Precision wins quietly. For 3 more days, I behaved exactly the same. Polite, neutral, predictable. She seemed relaxed, almost relieved, as if the 3 a.m. declaration had finally settled the tension, as if clarity had restored balance. She didn't know clarity had restored mine. On Thursday afternoon, she left for work early. She mentioned a regional sync call that might run late. I waited 30 minutes after her car disappeared. Then I went upstairs. I wasn't snooping anymore. I was collecting. Her office drawer was unlocked. Her laptop sat on the desk, closed but not powered off. And on the shelf near the window was something I hadn't seen before. A tablet. Slim. Black. Probably work-issued. I pressed the power button. No passcode. Just swipe. That surprised me, until I realized why. It wasn't a primary device. It was a convenience device. Still synced. Her email opened automatically. Then messages. Then cloud storage. And there it was. An entire parallel thread. Not corporate language. Not vague summaries. Real conversation. Daniel Mercer. The name no longer theoretical. The tone was different than what I'd imagined. Not romantic poetry. Not dramatic declarations. Casual. Comfortable. Familiar. Which somehow made it worse. Counting down to next week. Same room as last time? I still can't believe how easy this is. That line sat there. I still can't believe how easy this is. Easy. That word hollowed something inside me. There were booking confirmations forwarded between them. Hotel upgrades. Flight seat selections. Jokes about Alex thinking it's just strategy meetings. I read that message twice. Then a third time. There it was. Mockery. Not confusion. Not guilt. Confidence. There were expense reimbursements labeled as client engagement. Room service charges at 11:48 p.m. Photos. Nothing explicit. But int asterisk made enough. Hotel window views. Her bare shoulder in one reflection. His arm around her waist in another. No denial possible. No reinterpretation. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was infrastructure, a system, a routine. And woven into it was one consistent theme. They believed I would tolerate everything. They joked about it. She's not going anywhere. He won't look. He needs stability more than he needs answers. That last one stayed with me. He needs stability more than he needs answers. They had profiled me, reduced me, calculated me, and maybe for a while they were right, but not anymore. I didn't take photos of the screen. I exported everything. Forwarded threads to a secure account Rebecca had set up for documentation. Screensh *TS. Timestamps. Metadata. I was meticulous, because if this went to court, ambiguity would be the only thing that protected her. And I wasn't giving her ambiguity. Before leaving the room, I powered the tablet off and placed it exactly where it had been. No disturbance. No warning. When she came home that night, she was lighter than usual. She kissed my cheek, a rare gesture lately. I might have to travel again next week, she said casually. Cleveland. There it was. The word spoken aloud. My heartbeat didn't change. Busy season? I asked. Yeah. She smiled. Not nervous. Not guarded. Confident. That was the moment I realized something unsettling. She had already emotionally left. The house was just a staging ground. The marriage was just logistics. I went to bed early that night. Not out of sadness. Out of readiness. The next morning, I drove back to Cincinnati with the exported files. Rebecca reviewed the new material. She didn't raise an eyebrow. Clear pattern, she said. Extended duration. Documented intent. Mockery supports emotional abandonment. Emotional abandonment. Interesting phrase. Will she contest? I asked. Probably not successfully. And if she does? Discovery will expose more than she's comfortable defending. Good. We finalized the filing. Official petition. Citing Clause 9C. Supporting documentation attached. No accusations in bold letters. Just evidence. Clean. Procedural. Irreversible once served. When? Rebecca asked. Monday. Why Monday? Because she was scheduled to leave for Cleveland Tuesday morning. I wanted her served before departure. Not at the airport. Not dramatically. At home. In daylight. Routine disrupted quietly. I drove back Sunday evening. The house looked the same. Grass trimmed. Porch light on. Domestic normalcy. Inside, she was on the couch, laptop open. Did you get the rest you needed? She asked. I did. That was true. For the first time in months, I wasn't exhausted. I wasn't wondering. I wasn't chasing clarity. I had it. That night, I slept in our bedroom again. Not because anything had changed between us, but because I wasn't the one displaced anymore. She rolled to her side as usual, phone in hand. Screen glow reflected faintly in the window. I watched her for a moment, not with anger, not with longing, just observation. Tomorrow, I thought, tomorrow the illusion ends. Not with shouting, not with pleading, with paperwork and leverage. She believed this was easy. Monday would remind her that nothing is easy when documentation exists. And for the first time since Cleveland, I felt something close to control. Not over her, over myself. Monday came quietly. She was in the kitchen, reviewing something on her laptop, coffee steaming beside her. I had already signed everything the night before. At 10:14 a.m., there was a knock at the door. She frowned. Are you expecting someone? No. I opened it. The process server stood there, calm, professional. Megan Carter? Her face shifted the moment she heard her name. Yes. You've been served. The envelope looked small in his hand. Too small to carry 8 years of marriage. She stared at me as she opened it. At first confusion, then recognition, then something close to fear. Alex, what is this? You said we should be honest, I replied evenly. This is honesty. Her eyes scanned the pages faster and faster. The prenup? She whispered. Yes. Her voice cracked for the first time in months. You wouldn't. I did. By Tuesday, Cleveland was canceled. Not because of guilt, because her attorney called. The tone in the house changed instantly. No more confidence. No more casual detachment. She tried to talk, really talk, for the first time. "We can work this out," she said that evening. "You don't have to do this." "I don't," I agreed. "But I am." When she realized the clause was airtight, the mask fell. The house, the investments, the majority stake in everything we built. Irreversible. Within 3 months, the property was listed. Within 6, it was sold. I transferred to a different division. New state. Promotion finalized. The quiet that followed wasn't lonely. It was clean. The affair wasn't the defining moment. Refusing the ultimatum was. She thought I needed stability more than answers. She was wrong. I chose myself. And that changed everything.